Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. My man Joshua Perry riding shotgun here today. Going to be joined by Schlegs. Appreciate you guys tuning in, whether it's on Bally's, YouTube, across social media. Really appreciate it. Continue to like and subscribe. Continue to follow our stuff and comment on it. All the questions we have, we really appreciate everything. Big show today as we break down the spring game from this weekend, how that all looked, who was accelerating in that, who are the elite performers. Can we tell anything from the quarterback competition? Maybe dive in a little bit, some early draft talk, how that potentially looks, and maybe just some draft experiences. That's going to be coming up here in a couple weeks. Look at maybe some of the Ohio State coaching salaries and where they rank among college football. Probably not surprising, knowing some of the guys that they have right there. And then always we got tailgate talk with your questions, and hopefully we might even get joined by our guy, Mr. Anthony Schlegel. He's kind of like a chupacabra, mythical creature. Joshua pops in, pops out. You have no idea what is going. So I've got like all these notes like of my stuff from the spring game here. So I was watching, just jotting it down. Your thoughts though? I mean, this is big spring game, 80,000 people. Weather looked great on television. It was probably a little rougher here. I mean, it was pretty
Yeah.
windy. And you could see, I don't want to judge the quarterbacks too harshly because of that wind, but huge attendance. I think they were pumped about it. A lot of, some former guys there that, I think played with you or around your era
Yeah.
on the sideline. Your boy Zeke cruising around. So it was a
Yeah.
really who's list. And I thought it was a very successful day.
Well, I think it's always fun to see the former guys back in town. I wish I could have been out there, and some of my colleagues from NBC were out there making their spring rounds. But sidelines were packed. You got the old faces everybody's familiar with, so it's good to see that support there. Before we get into the actual game, I also thought watching it from home, the Fox broadcast was a really fun thing. It felt
Yeah.
like a lot of access that you don't get otherwise. Having Urban in the booth, I thought was really good. I love Brady Quinn. So it was great to have him there. And for folks who don't know about Benetti up there in the booth, he is one of the best in the business. So I think that was cool. But Joel Klatt
How about
down
how about
there,
them beating up on Matt Leinart too? I mean, him catching
well,
stray bullets,
you
can't
know,
even defend himself.
so Liners, what he's probably going to do is going to have to get on his TikTok and make a reaction video to that, because he's got the great social media presence there. I think the dudes are just jealous about that. It's neither here nor there. But Klatt was down there on the field and he was hanging out with Ryan Day, and I thought it was amazing because Ryan would give the play call to the offense, and then he would talk through what the read was supposed to be and what the play concept was. And maybe some people feel like that's giving up too much information. I'll tell you right now, every defensive coordinator in the country knows what the keys are supposed to be for the offense and
Yeah.
everything. So it's really good insight for fans and for viewers. So from that standpoint, was really good. Defense, phenomenal. I think we both knew that defense was going to be really good. The running backs, they're going to be great. The wide receiver room, as advertised. I think the question for everybody is the offensive line. I thought it was hard to judge, but it's hard for me to say that it was a bad day. I do think they need to improve, and it's probably going to be the biggest question for people. But the guys look comfortable out there. Wasn't a lot of mechanical issues going on with the grouping, so I like that. And then from the quarterback standpoint, I'm with you. I know what the wind does to a quarterback, and you talk to those guys, things that they hate is rain and they hate wind. And so that makes it a little bit more challenging. But Will Howard goes out there, looks like he has good command. Devin Brown looks like he has good command. So from the veteran guys, it seems like they were comfortable. Julian Sand went out and made a couple of mistakes, as you would expect from a young guy. You could also see the talent. That ball jumps out of his hands. And so it feels like this quarterback room is going to be in a solid spot.
It does. And they did a pretty good job for having to play five guys. I thought that they got the reps out there pretty good. And especially we got a chance to see a lot of those young guys, in the second half. And to your point, the defense usually in the spring is ahead of the offense. That's just kind of how it goes because it takes longer to get cohesion on offense and to be a cohesive unit. So I think we kind of expected that, especially defense, probably a little more veteran as well, playing some of those guys into the second half. You saw Sonny Styles still running around out there in the second half. And some people probably question, like, well, why is he playing out there? The guy's played a ton of plays, but he hasn't played a ton of plays at linebacker.
He needs
So, like,
reps.
we're still getting rep count up for guys like him. I think CJ Hicks did some really good things on defense. I think there was also probably a couple fits that I was watching where it's like, it got a little squirrely, I think, on the one touchdown run. as you know, Joshua, sometimes like gaps close, you roll away, and then they all of a sudden like open back up, and it's a tough spot to kind of be in. I thought Gabe Powers played pretty well too. I missed the one tackle on Jaden Ballard running to the side, and I'm like, that might be the fastest guy on the team, so I'm gonna give him a little slack on that. That's a tough play that you got to make on a jet sweep like that, but the coverage in the secondary is what I thought was really impressive. And yeah, we knew Jordan Hancock was going to be good. Jermaine Matthews, really good as a freshman. The outside guys, Davidson, with what he's been able to do, Denzel Burke. But I was really impressed outside of that, Joshua, with the younger guys and a lot of guys who just got here. And they're going against, as we know, Brian Hartline recruits really talented receivers. And these quarterbacks kept pulling it down. And you heard Joel Klatt talk about it time after time after time. The fact that, hey, it's sticky coverage out there. It's Velcro. There's not a lot of places to go with the ball. And you put that in connection with the wind, and all of a sudden now you don't feel like you have that great control. And when guys are side by side, it's like, okay, I'd rather pull it down, go get some yards.
Right.
Trying to make those quick decisions still, which is good, but you don't want to make those critical mistakes. And it was great, like you said, listening to Ryan talk through, like, get the ball out, get the ball out. It's always coaches always want it quicker, as you know, Joshua.
Yeah, and I mean, from the defensive perspective, like Luke Fickell used to talk about this, but he wanted to challenge everything, and that didn't necessarily mean that like you get a hand on the ball every play or you can get an interception every play, but the idea was that you wanted to make it as tough as possible for the offense. So the windows have to be as tight as possible, make the quarterback have to make a really good throw. And I think that's what the secondary is this year. Now, to your point for the offense, of course, you would like to see, those guys look a little bit smoother out there, given the situation, given the fact that they're going up against what could be one of the best secondaries. It is what it is. Thing that I like, these quarterbacks can run the ball, right? Like the play breaks down, they go through, read one's not there, read two's not there, look at the check down, and they're like, you know what, this check down might get us 4, but I could get us 7 right now. And I think that changes the equation. We talk about it all the time, but from a defensive perspective, when there is a quarterback out there that can hurt with his legs, and it's not the fact that he does it all the time, but if the threat is there, you have to play different on defense. And I like the idea that when the play isn't perfect, that these guys can, they can extend it, or if it's not there, they can just pull it down and get you yards.
Absolutely. And that's something that's big. And I think Ryan, he's lamented that last season that they didn't really have that element to be able to do it. And now you have these quarterbacks so you can pull it down, Joshua. Like you said, it may only be 3 or 4 times a game. And he also talked about these are all kind of RPO, maybe not designed quarterback runs. So you're on the perimeter. You have a chance to maybe get out of bounds, chance to get down. You're not taking those big collisions. They're not interior running plays
Right.
off tackle and things like that. So it's a little different. Like Will Howard, you feel pretty good about him doing that. He's a big guy. Julian saying he can move. Aaron Nolan, he can move. Those are young guys. Lincoln is still young and kind of physically
Yeah.
immature. All of them. They're 19-year-old guys, 18, 19-year-old guys. So there's got to be some move coming with that. And we'll get all that figured out. They had an homage to Woody Hayes that we'll talk about, how they opened the game. Last year was Archie. This year was something a little bit different. There's a lot of things that we got to get into. We talk about that offensive line, much more that we're going to dive into on that as well, Joshua. And then up next, we got our guy, Mr. Anthony Schlegel. He was cruising around the sidelines. He's going to be joining us next right here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and Joshua Perry's been with us. He'll be with us the whole show. But right now, our guy, Mr. Anthony Friedrich Schlegel, fresh in his nice little truck, cruising around, maybe driving, who knows what's going on. Big weekend that just obviously happened. Saddle up, coaches clinic, spring game. We'll start off with the environment there, Schlegs. For folks that weren't there in person, in the flesh, what was it like this year?
Well, spring game was amazing. Buckeye Nation did a phenomenal job. 80,000 plus people, millions watching. It was a great environment, or they were into it, and you understand, everybody kind of understood. I mean, there were certain guys that weren't going live, and then there's guys that need to go live. That's it. And really didn't understand the point system, but that's okay because I mean we had 4 picks, and I'm like, what? Like, why can't we get 4 points for that? You know, we talk about 4-point plays in the red zone. Like, give us four. And I'm over there on the defensive sideline juicing them up. And I felt our DBs ready for this day. I mean, they came out and they had like one sleeve, you know, there's like a one sleever, which I like. That's kind of cool, but we got to all mix. So we had to go get a bunch of sleeves to put on the other side. They were ready to play. Guys understood, and what I kept trying to tell them was, you know, put your best foot forward, let it go. You know, let it go, man. Because this is what allows you to have the film for the coaches to be able to say, okay, this is what you need to improve upon, along with the other 14 practices that you had. But they want to see the progression from practice to practice 15. And that's going to carry you into we have a discretionary period and then in the summer to get ready for camp. So that's what you kind of always got to be working on. But the environment was great. There's a ton of former guys that were back, which was awesome to see. And our guys loved that, being able to talk to them, have them present. And then we had they took that afterward, and then you had Saddle Up. I mean, the Ohio high school coaches clinic that we had before was fantastic. And we even had a thing on Saturday morning discussing strength and conditioning. So just everything around the entire weekend I thought was just a huge success. And you know, really was able to focus and showcase our guys this weekend.
So one of the other elements, like you did, that you mentioned, a coaches clinic before the spring game, Schlegs, you did a little strength element to that for the coaches that were going to be there, called Side Nuggets with Schlegs. You're pretty fired up when I saw you at Saddle Up about how that went. Give us some of the knowledge bombs that you dropped to those high school coaches about training their dudes, their high school dudes.
I mean, it was dudes and dudettes. You know, I mean, a lot of the first off, I thanked them for being coaches because coaches is a service occupation. You know, you have to want to serve kids, especially if you're a position coach, and then you also handle the weight room. There's a lot more that goes on into that, right? Than just, you know, practice scripts. And I thanked them, made them look at our guys that were actually looking down from where they eat. I made them wave at them, and I was just like, that's why we do what we do. Just don't ever lose focus of that, regardless of the wins and losses. And obviously the wins at Ohio State, paramount, yes, but regardless, right? We do what we do because of the players and the ability to set them up for success and develop them for, you know, their future. And we never lose sight and focus of why we do what we do. And that was actually my first side nugget is your why. And that kind of went into your purpose and values. Actually, I think it was purpose and values first. Then it was your coaching why. And, you know, I articulated mine. It was to maximize people through authentic service, and being authentic, service, excellence, and integrity are my core values. And I didn't go into all the stories. I only had about 12 to 15 minutes to talk, and there's a lot of side nuggets I wanted to get to. But that's paramount first. And then 2 was your why. And then 3 was the culture of your program being in alignment with the culture of the weight room, because language drives change and you have to know those different aspects. Then it went into what does your weight room look like, feel like, act like. And I talked to him about the fact, I was like, listen, man, I love 90s rock. I mean, give me some hardcore DMX in there, give me some, you know, Lil Wayne and, you know, Lil Jon, Eastside Boys, and like, crank it, rock this up that, you know, there's talk like, well, we don't like music in the weight room. Care what you like in particular. It's what's the environment that you're creating that they like. Turn the music. But then you got to go get bumpy. Because I take you to depths in which you don't want to go. Because that's how you improve. And so it was kind of one of those things. And it was Thursday. And I gave him this, you know, illustration. But it's Thursday after 13 practices. And it was a hard 13th practice. And Kickstart Your Heart comes on, and it was somewhat loud, you know, but you could still hear me in the way that I talk. But then Nick refreshed it and then cranked it even higher. And somebody that I work with that's not like, you know, getting after it, and again, they're going to be at different levels when they come in. And all of a sudden, like, he guys wasn't really feeling it, but then he started feeling it because everybody else was feeling it. He was bobbing his head to it. There's times and moments where you just got to get them to want to go. We're not, you know, greatness is the accumulation of great days. We talk about stacking days. Like you can't. So whatever it is that you got to do to allow them to want to fill it for themselves and also for each other, that's what you got to do. So there was a lot more side nuggets. It was literally six. I didn't get to the bottom two, but I probably had another three or four side nuggets within the side nuggets. So it was just a
Yeah.
great. And then all the I told how I appreciated Coach Mick and our staff. They did a phenomenal job articulating different things. It was great, man. It was a lot of nuggets, a lot of knowledge bombs going on, and they definitely walked away with something.
Fantastic. Saddle Up. How did that end up going? Saturday night, second year they've done this there. Gary LaVox, north of Nashville. Saw a lot of our dudes out there. You know, Tyvis, the Pals, the Posies, the Bournes were there. I mean, a lot of players, all the coaches. It seemed like it went off pretty successful. Did you have a good time? And is it how great is it that experience to watch the coaches kind of mingle around and talk to a bunch of Buckeye Nation that's just packed up in there and really having a great time raising money, for some NIL and for the Buckeye Cruise.
Well,
Yeah, Gary.
before you get
Yeah,
all
go
the
ahead.
way into it too, I just need to know because it's one of the things I lament that I missed. But any behind the scenes insight you can give us as well would be appreciated.
Of the saddle up. Well, I'll tell you one right now. I mean, CJ Barnett, I didn't realize he's enormous head, and he played safety for us. And now he would definitely be a linebacker because he's a bigger guy, and we have to be. These are inside the behind the scenes things, and we're doing this jockey race where they roll dice, and if you're dice your lane, I was a 5 and Chip Kelly was a 6, and the 6 got called. He got to take a step, and then anyways, before this was all going on, we all get auctioned off, and I went for 19, and Coach Day obviously brought the most. He had 29,000 for him, but CJ went up there and he was just trying to get it going. He took his shirt off. You know what I mean? People are starting to realize you got whatever you got to do, you got to do. So he happened to take his shirt off, and he came up there with Sam Tony. It was great. Chip Kelly and I went to the wire, photo finish. And he ended up beating me for third place in that feat to go to the finals, which really hurt me because I was coming off a fresh win with Bobby on the Buckeye team. I thought I had a lot of momentum going, and Chip kind of took away some of my thunder. And honestly, Bob, I should have called you up there because, you win as a team, and I lost as an individual. Built into that, but, it was good. I'll tell you this, man, it's good for our coaches to have an event like that, like a wrap-up, because not only do we hear North of Nashville and Gary LaVox, and people are singing all those songs because they're kind of our age and they remember them. But it allows you to take a deep breath because it's been a long time. I mean, from winter conditioning and the spring football into everything that goes in day in and day out and all the recruiting that happens over the weekend. Like, it was kind of like and you catch my breath for a hot second. And then guess what? Here comes Monday. But at least for that moment, that night and then Sunday, I can catch my breath.
Nice, nice. Well, Schlegs, we appreciate it. We know you've got a lot going on. It was a busy weekend for you. Now spring ball's over. Guys get a little bit of break before they probably can't ratchet up summer training. I know we got finals last week of school here coming up as they kind of round out the month of April. So thank you for spending some time with us. Go enjoy it, relax a little bit, and man, can't wait to catch up soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, man.
Buckeyes. Coming up next, we'll dive in a little more to the spring game, some more details, some things Joshua and I want to talk about, plus the Ohio State coaching, assistant coaching salaries, one of the most well-compensated groups, I believe, in the nation, and I think you're going to see why this year. We'll get into all that here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back in to the show, and Schlegs is dynamite as always. Tons of energy, Joshua, as he's rolling through there. Some other quick notes from the spring game. I thought it was interesting. Played Shabola at tackle a little bit, or at guard, which I don't think I'd really seen a whole lot coming in here, and played Fryer a little more at tackle. And I know we'll probably get a lot of questions about that moving forward. But that right side of the offensive line, they had Luke Montgomery there moving around. He's playing some guard. I think Carson Hinsman was maybe even in there at guard. And they're trying to figure out that best combination. Is that the biggest probably concern for you coming out of spring right now?
Yeah, concern, question, however you'd like to put it. I would say it's going to be the offensive line. I honestly felt like after watching the offense, the quarterbacks I think played with enough command and confidence that with all the rest of the talent on the offense, I don't think that they're going to be a problem. What can be a problem is if their timing is rushed and if they're throwing from a cloudy pocket constantly, if the offensive line can't get enough push in the run game. That would be the biggest issue to me. So again, I said this last week, and I think it's true. As many combinations as they need to continue to try out throughout the summer, they should, and throughout training camp, they should, and they should find the five guys that they're most confident in, whatever that order looks like. Should be the guys that roll out there, and I think even throughout the season too, there you don't want to be back and forth on who's starting, who's not. But I think that everybody should know that the jobs are going to be up if the offensive line doesn't look the way it needs to. I think that's the one thing that would hold this team back. But again, and I've said this before, I think it's an overall talented group that's got some depth. It's just about whether they can really tap into that top end that we've seen the past few years. And we get spoiled at Ohio State because in secondary, you watch corners that play in the first round. We watch, top five edge rushers on defense. We watch wide receivers that are first round picks year in and year out. We've also seen some really damn good players on the offensive line, some first round picks there as well. They might not have that guy, but can they push somebody to get to the top level of their potential so it feels like you have that guy? I think that would make people feel better.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's going to be some time. And I think Chip Kelly did a great job talking at the coaches clinic about the stretch zone, stretch run scheme, and everything you do with that, and why he likes it. And he's such a good play caller of calling into the team's strengths and being able to cover weaknesses. You put that in concert with Justin Fry, who I think is a pretty good offensive line coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they'll be able to get that worked out, but they're gonna have to figure that out this summer and then into training camp. And maybe that's even something they address in the portal. I know that they probably don't want to do that, but they'll see what's out there. And
You got to do what you got to do.
you gotta do what you gotta do if you got a championship roster. A couple other things, a lot was made. Dallin Hayden, jumped in the
Yep.
portal or made the announcement that he was going to get into the portal, which now, I understand why he did that. You want to get hurt at the end of spring ball. Plus, honestly, if you're Ohio State, the coaching staff, and you look at it, if you're not going to be here, we're not going to give you reps anyway. Like,
For sure.
we got two other young guys with Peoples and then Sam Williams Dixon, who I thought both of those guys, Joshua, have impressed throughout the spring. I thought both of them had some nice runs in the game and really showed some nice versatility. So I think there maybe is more depth in that room, albeit they're freshmen. But if you're not asking him to go out and be the guy like 80% of the time, I think either one of those guys can come in and be that third running back potentially for you this year.
Okay, and I think that's a big thing that you said, right? Like I think that the health of that room plays big into how I feel about the depth at running back. And we've seen Travion Henderson where he's been beat up in the past, and Quinshawn Judkins is coming in with a ton of carries under his belt. And so I think you have to make sure you manage those guys to where you get the most out of them, but you also keep them as fresh and as healthy as possible. But if you're looking at a third running back, who's a guy who's just really in there to spell guys or games get out of control, whatever the case is, you feel pretty good, right? And I think Peoples came in with some good hype, and he certainly lived up to it as a young guy. And I think running back is a position where you can have success as a young player as long as there's not too much on your plate, and it doesn't feel like that with the top two guys in this room. So I definitely felt better about the depth of that room coming out of the spring game. Certainly it was going to be on display because you don't necessarily want to make it too much of a passing scrimmage when you're trying to rotate five quarterbacks in there. It's just hard to get any semblance of a rhythm. So running backs ended up being a little bit of a feature, and the young guys took advantage of the opportunity.
And then lastly, one other player I kind of want to feature, and it's a guy who showed up here with a ton of potential and played some linebacker. He's had a lot of injuries. I believe 2 ACLs and one in spring, one in training camp. Like just when you feel like he was starting to get over the hump. And Mitchell Melton, I thought it
Yep.
looked very good yesterday. He, I think, has a ton of ability to be an edge player at the next level. Reminded me a lot of Baron Browning, who you've seen have a lot of success now out with the Broncos. Was playing more off the ball at Ohio State. But Mitchell Melton, I think, as we talk about, obviously JT and Jack, and then you start going with Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson and how good those guys are. Mitchell Melton kind of has a unique skill set because he brings that linebacker length and athleticism to where you can do some unique things with him out there. And now he's developing that pass rush as well.
Yeah, I mean, before he tore the ACL, and then this was probably like an overreaction to just watching him a little bit that spring, but I felt like he might have had the most ability as a rusher, maybe the most upside as a pass rusher out of anybody in that group, and that includes, you know, the top flight guys who, you know, we feel are going to be some of the most coveted draft picks here in a year, in Jack and JT. When you watch him, he's got some twitch and he's got some juice. You mentioned the long levers there. You know, I think he's a guy, when you're playing linebacker, naturally, you know how to keep people off of your body. And I think that it just translated for him right away when he got closer to the line of scrimmage. And so I'm excited to see what the heck he actually looks like, because I was like, this dude could be an impact player as a rotational rusher. Now he's more veteran. He's got something to prove because he hasn't played in a little while. Like, I think this could be a lot of fun.
Should be. And then, you know, one of the other things that, you know, we just teased up and talked about there, Ohio State, their assistant coaches pool set to be almost $11.5 million this year. And this is the one thing that nobody really talks about is when you talk about head coaches and what they make, like your assistant pool should be probably that, if not a little more, which is where Ohio State is. Jim Knowles, Chip Kelly, each making about $2 million a year. I think it's safe to say that Ohio State has made a commitment, you know, especially at the assistant level, which they really had never had to do before, to make sure those guys, the coordinators, and even the position coaches are well compensated, Joshua.
Yes, and you know, this is the day and age we're in. You're getting a lot of money coming in through the TV networks. You got to spend it. So we're looking at facilities was kind of the old way, but now it's like, okay, what else can we do to really enhance our program? And people are starting to realize, well, we can retain the best talent, we can attract the best talent if we were able to pay like the best in America. And so I think that's a big deal. Now, I'm probably going to mess up the timing here on the show, but I had this thought a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's really intriguing because the role of the head coach has changed, where you get these guys who naturally have elevated from being great play callers, but they can't do that the way they want to, because you got to be the fundraiser and you got to be the recruiter and all the other things. So my thought process has been, you hire a guy, and I know this is not going to ever sound great, like you're at the head coach at Ohio State, you want to be the best paid head coach, but you hire a guy based off of other qualities, not play calling. Then you don't pay him as much, but you bump up the assistant pool to where you could pay your coordinators $3 or $3.5 million a year. Some coaches out there, head coaches at programs, making that. So now you get the guy who doesn't necessarily want to do all the head coach stuff, really good offensive, defensive play caller. You bring those guys in and you do that. I could see that actually being like the next evolution of this thing, because there are so many guys, and I'm just saying so many, but at least we saw this offseason, there are a number of guys who say, I don't get to do the thing that I'm really good at and what I got into this business to do. And I think a lot of them would be comfortable saying, $3 million is a lot of money for me to just come out here and draw up plays all day long. Very interesting. But the salary staff pool is one of the most underrated items in college football in terms of success.
Absolutely. And you see the great schools, you look at their assistant salary pool, and it's usually fairly robust because you got to be able to keep and retain. There's 10 assistant coaches, there's one head coach. The head coach is very vital and he's important, but he's only as good as the totality of his staff. All right, coming up, NFL draft going to be here in a couple of weeks. Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to be at the top of the list of getting drafted somewhere high in the first round. Will he be at the draft? Let's find out here on the Bobby Carpenter Show next. Welcome back into the program. NFL draft right around the corner. Marvin Harrison Jr. going to be confirmed to be one of the players at the draft. Joshua, like, do you like that move for Marvin? He's a low-key guy. I know the NFL really wants those guys there. He'll probably be the first non-quarterback off the board or right there in that general window. Going to be up there in Detroit. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting because of the personality, but like, this is something that is once in a lifetime, truly. And I think that he might just, you know, he realizes the magnitude of only getting to do that one time. I also respect guys that say that they want to do it a little bit more private or just be, you know, with their family, have it a little bit more intimate. Like, it's definitely one of those moments where you know, you put it on the vision board as a kid, now all of a sudden it's coming true. But I love seeing the guys there on draft day. I like seeing the outfits, and maybe that's a part of the reason why Marv wants to be there. You know, he's a low key dude. One thing the man knows how to do is get dressed, right? He's a dresser. He's into the fashion, and it's a little bit of a red carpet situation out there. So maybe he wants to enjoy that too.
What'd you do? I mean, were you just a guy that kind of chilled at your house?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for me to do anything else. It was, day 3 pick. Like I'm chilling, sitting at home, watching all my homeboys get drafted, and then Saturday afternoon comes around, I hear my name.
Yeah. And even mine, I mean, I chose to stay at home, have kind of a party, friends, family, everybody just hanging out, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more chill. I mean, it was fun. Don't get me wrong, it got a little rowdy, but I get it. I understand going. The NFL, they're making TV shows now. I mean, the NFL draft,
Hmm.
you would have to argue, is the biggest non-game sporting event in the country. Like, I
No
don't
doubt.
think, I mean, is there any doubt to that? It's 3 days, it's prime time, and they've done a great job. But to do that, you need the characters that are going to be playing in these roles. So having Marvin Harrison, having Caleb Williams, all those guys going there. What pick do you ultimately think he ends up going? Do you think he's first non-quarterback? How many QBs go before him? Where do you see this thing breaking out?
He's the first non-quarterback, no doubt. I don't see him getting past 5 to the Chargers. There's been the conversation about Arizona and if they could get a haul for that number 4 pick, if somebody wants to go up and make sure after the first 3 quarterbacks are gone, they can get their guy. If you're Arizona, I mean, you probably can max out that pick there and get a lot of value out of it. So I could see a move being made there. If they don't move, they're taking Marv. And if they do move, I think the Chargers, especially with the wide receiver room they have right now, has got no guys in there. They
Yeah.
got to go. They got to get Marv.
Yeah, it's interesting, to see kind of the teams at the top where they go and by what a haul would be if they trade for him. And that's going to basically tell you how much people covet him. And so that'll be very interesting to kind of see if there is a big trade that potentially happens at the top. I'm curious to see the one that I think everybody's now reserved that Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 overall, but is it Jalen Daniels that goes second now? I mean, it's how many quarterbacks go in the top 5? Does your boy from Michigan slide up there? I mean, I've seen McCarthy where now he's like, and I don't know if this is true or not, and this is a lot of conjecture and things that are spoken about publicly. I don't know if he's that guy. Maybe he ultimately is, but people are like, hey, he'd be, if he was in North Carolina's system, he would have been better than Drake May, is what some people say. So I have no idea how this works. So maybe there are 3 quarterbacks that go 1, 2, 3. Maybe they go 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5. I have no idea, but it seems like there's a lot of momentum for the overdrafting of some of these players.
Well, the quarterbacks consistently get overdrafted. I feel like it's tough for them too because your draft slot comes with expectations, right? And it's
Yeah,
not your fault that somebody is so desperate to get you that they're going to draft you in a situation where it's going to feel like you're behind the 8 ball. But I would definitely see it as Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. I personally don't like Drake May that much. I think there's too much inconsistency in his game, and I don't like the mechanics there. But that's what all the prognosticators say. So he would be the third one. If somebody could move up and make a deal, Minnesota, whoever, to get the number 4 pick, it feels like a JJ McCarthy thing. JJ McCarthy could either be a top 5 pick like people are telling us, or he could be Will Levis from last year in terms of the draft type, and then maybe he slides a little bit. I think he's good. I think he's got a lot of talent. One of the knocks is you don't see it a ton. He never had to be Superman, and I'd like to see that. The other thing is he had some bad games. TCU was a bad game. Bowling Green was
yeah,
a bad game. His game this year against Maryland was a bad game. Those games were awful. Like his bad ones are really bad, but he's consistent most of the time, and I think people value that.
absolutely. Coming up next, we got Tailgate Talk. Your questions answered by Joshua and I. Next on Bobby Carpenter's Show. Welcome back into the show. And now we've got Tailgate Talk. It's your favorite time. It's where we answer your questions. It's brought to you by Tipico Sportsbook, and they're going to change the way you bet with their new Tipico Rewards program. The more you bet, the more you can earn and the more you can win. And to celebrate this big play, well, we're holding our own company-wide contest to see which of our shows can climb the leaderboard and prove that they are the best bettors right here at Big Play. The winning show, hey, they may even give out some bet credits to their listeners each month. So stay tuned for that. as we continue to push forward. March Madness now in the books. There's going to be all kinds of opportunities as you move forward. So be sure to follow along with your favorite big play personalities on social media to lock in your bets with us all week long. I'm not maybe the best bettor in the world, but Josh, I can throw some sage advice out there when needed. Remember, must be 21 years old. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, now we get the questions from you. I'm going to fire away, get some of these rolling here. From Nick Scroggins, who impressed the most of the spring game after the spring game? Are there any holes in the roster that need to be addressed in the portal?
All right, so holes in the roster. I wouldn't say glaring. Like we talked about it a little bit earlier. If you felt like there was an offensive lineman that you had to go out and get, I think that you should do it, regardless of how people would feel about that inside the offensive line room. In terms of impressing, I'm going to give one that it flew under the radar, I think, for some. Emeka Ibuka played last year, was banged up, right? Just wasn't himself a year ago. He had that catch on the sideline, stick the big mid out there, one-handed, got both feet down, would have been good on Sundays. And sometimes we forget. I forgot a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and lie. And just to know that's a veteran guy, right? We're talking a lot about JJ and talking about some of these young guys that could be an impact. And it's like, well, Emeka's sitting right there and would have been a first-round pick if he wasn't banged up a year ago. And he looks like a first-round pick.
Yeah, I saw Mech after the game, and I go, listen, sometimes you got to let them young fellows. You got to remind them who's been here and who's been doing it. Okay, JJ Smith, that's great. Jeremiah, great player, but you know what?
Yep.
You know how many catches he has right now for the Buckeyes, Joshua? 0. All right, Brandon Ennis, like these guys, young guys like Cardinal Tate, they're good, really talented, but Emeka Ibuka, obviously, yes, showing everybody why he's a guy that when he came in, him and Marvin were like kind of 1-2, 1-3 on a lot of preseason boards last year, and Emeka trying to regain obviously that title there. This is coming from the Fisherman. Why did the coaches try to force Fryer at offensive tackle? And I'll kind of start with this, Joshua. I think they're trying him out there. He was an all Big Ten performer at tackle. Could he be a better guard? Probably, but you still have to have somebody that plays tackle. And so it's kind of a selfless thing for him to be like, I'll do this again if that's what we need. And they're trying Tegra Shabola out there. They're rotating some guys. They're working to try to figure this thing out. I think they probably would say, hey, if Fryer wants to play inside, great. That'll be fantastic. Just what are we going to do at tackle at this point?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. The other thing too, man, body types, right? Like you try to put a guy at guard and then you just keep looking at your offensive line. It's like, man, wouldn't it be nice to have big dude out there with some length? And it's like, do we have a guy in this room that looks like that? And it's like, well, yeah, we got Fryer. And it's like, yeah, we know we tried this and maybe it wasn't up to standard, but I mean, look at the dude. He looks like an offensive tackle. He's played it. He's had some success there. Like, I understand why they keep doing this.
A lot of questions about the offensive line. And the thing is, in the spring, as you know, Josh, like you get some of these asymmetric looks where, you have second, third team offensive line, and there's maybe a bigger drop there than there is on the defensive line side. It was on that, the catch by Emeka that said, check how the right guard pulled and the D lineman ran right past him. Talks about, what's Fry teaching and different things like that. And then also our DB's so good to cover our great receivers, or do the quarterbacks just not have enough time for deep routes? The first thing,
here we go.
Everybody always wants to pretend like they know what's going on any given play and specific play. And so I'll get to go back and take a peek at that and take a look. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what he's doing, but I'll tell you this, like I watched Justin Fry coach these guys. I've seen good O-line coaching. I've seen poor O-line coaching. He is in the good category. It takes time to develop some of these guys. And I also, Josh, you've been around coaches that can tell guys something till they're blue in the face. And just because they tell them that doesn't mean that it actually gets executed. So that's part of it. I think these corners, I think the secondary, though, the second part of that question, I think this secondary is really stinking good, man. These receivers are good, but I think these young corners and even the veteran guys, safeties, like they can all play high level ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there on the secondary, and I mean, we watch the clips from practice. Like the receivers were getting open in practice too, right? Like the secondary just had themselves a day, and they should get a pat on the back. This has been really good competition between two of probably the top position groups in the country. And so I think we should just appreciate it for what it's worth. Now, in terms of the play where the Mecca play, so guards pulling, and his track is a little bit wide. I'll give that. And I think it might have been JT who was on the pressure, whoever goes up and under. The part that y'all aren't looking at, there was no edge to that defense. So if I'm grading this from a defensive perspective, I'm looking at Will Howard, if he wanted to, could have pulled that ball down and there was no one within 10 to 12 yards of him. That is not great defensive structure. And so we can sit here and we can lament and, oh, Will Howard had to flush the pocket. Well, yeah, I mean, he flushed the pocket because there was nothing but green grass out there because there was no edge to the defense. And so I feel like, again, take a deep breath. Like, these things happen. It might look a certain way during a spring game because the quarterback's being told, hey, throw the football instead of running it when the play breaks down so we can actually get a rep out here. But in a game, I feel like that's a big gain for the offense, and we're probably looking at the defense a little sideways.
Yeah, I mean, when you break contain, the one thing that distorts it is when the quarterbacks aren't live, they're not able to actually go and run. And the defenders kind of just give them drive-bys. It's a lot harder to get a sack and bring a guy down when he can actually be tackled, as opposed to you slap it on the shoulder. And sometimes that's going to get him, but sometimes it's not. You'd like to think your quarterback can help his offensive line a little bit and be able to relieve some of that pressure there. So understand that. Believe me, there's questions to be answered on the offensive line. Those will get answered as the summer rolls along and then as we get into fall camp. Coming up, we're going to wrap up the show. Spring practices are over. What does it look like here the rest of the summer? And what do they got going up next? Josh and I will talk about it here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, here as we wrap up the program, spring ball is in the books. Joshua, like after spring ball, what was the feeling like that Saturday night after the spring game?
I mean, whatever the vibes were on High Street was whatever the vibes I was feeling at that point. It's fun. Everybody gets out. You kind of take a deep breath, appreciate the work that you put in. And then you get a little bit of a break when it's time to get back to it. Schlegs had mentioned the discretionary period, which is a time where they can't tell you to work out, but they tell you should probably be working out. And it's kind of self-guided and team-led. And that's a good reprieve. And then once summer classes get started back up, though, that's when you really get back to the grind. And summer was always a fun time for me because your course schedule is pretty light and you're doing more football stuff in terms of your training. So it feels like football, but you get to spend a lot of time with your team. And I felt like that was always great. Like, in spring, it's like, yeah, we practice, but I got to go to class and I probably can't hang out. In the summer, I got nothing but time. All I'm doing is hanging out, and we used to have a blast.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. Like you said, you get the classes. Heck, a lot of them are online in the summer. Maybe you're taking one, possibly two. Maybe you have a little internship. But man, all you do is lift weights. You work out. You do maybe a little 7-on-7. There's some things in there, but it's the closest time where I think you actually feel like Joshua. You feel like a professional. Like, this is what I'm doing. Like, I'm playing football. I'm taking care of my body, making sure that I'm preparing. Because these guys now, I mean, you're talking 16, potentially 17 games that are in the hopper. So you want to get your body as right as possible before you head into camp. And then, like you said, the main part, like all the times you talk about hanging out in the apartment, like those days are done. Like you don't get to do that anymore as an adult with responsibilities and a child now. In your case, Joshua, I got a couple. Like those are the days. Like if I could just take like 1 week of college life, I'd probably pull like month of June or July somewhere out of there and say, all right, I wake up, I work out, maybe do one class, and then like, hey, you guys want to see a movie? You want to hang out?
Yeah,
where are we
go
eating?
to Zambezi Bay, you go to the golf course. What do you want to do?
Yeah, they do a lot of things. So it's a lot of fun. They got that to look forward to, but they will be preparing for the season. We'll be here all season, summer long, leading into the season, right here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.